Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for this week's MEMO Live in conversation with Amos Trust. Amos Trust is a human rights organization, and today we'll be talking about one of their projects in Gaza, in which they're trying to arrange a cycling Paralympics team to join the Olympics next year. Today we have joining us Chris Rose, the director of Amos Trust, along with Nick Welsh, the head of communications at Amos Trust. Thank you for joining us today. Let's just start easy by introducing yourselves and your roles in Amos Trust, and maybe tell me more about the organization as well.
Chris, why don't you carry that one?
Yeah. Hi, I'm Chris Rose. I'm the director of Amos Trust. Amos is a small creative human rights organization. We seek to challenge injustice, to create hope, and to bring about change by working with local grassroots partners on the ground in different contexts. Got three areas of work. The first of those is Palestine justice, where we campaign for rights for Palestinians. And we look to do that in a threefold response, which is about celebrating creativity in the arts and culture. The second way is about building facts on the ground, particularly in the West Bank, but also in Gaza. And the third way is about advocating for rights and programs which focus on specific rights. And that has a particular focus on Gaza. And then our other areas of work are about climate justice and about the rights for girls and young women who are living on the streets in different countries, different cities around the world.
Okay, so there's a couple of initiatives taking place. How did you get to Gaza?
How did we get to Gaza?
Yeah.
We've been involved in, we've worked with Gaza for, for us, when we started working in Palestine, you could go to Gaza very easily. It was just kind of, it wasn't segregated in that respect. So we worked with a hospital there for 25, 30 years almost. Al Ali Hospital, or the Arab hospital there, or the English hospital, depending on if you live in Gaza, it's called so many different names that it's kind of normally known as the English hospital. Worked there for years. For the last 10 years, that's focused on breast cancer screening. And then I went the first time, I think it was 2012 maybe. We set up a partnership with an organization called NECC about their youth training programs. And then we tried to go in once, twice a year, depending on permits, basically, and sort of time and everything else. And through that, and through those visits, we established links with various different groups and different people in Gaza, including the artists involved on location, some of the people involved in the cycling. We kind of met through those links and those trips. Mm-hmm. And so we kind of do it that way. And all our work is based about relationships. And so we're not somewhere which just does it all based on the numbers and the turnout from something and the outcomes. It's very much based about what people are doing in the relationship, because we want a long-term engagement. And we kind of take the view that everybody's is allowed to make mistakes and get things wrong, including ourselves. And if you have a relationship with people, when things go wrong, that's okay. You can, if you've got a relationship, you see it for what it is, as opposed to if it's a set of figures, then it all just gets horribly messy very, very quickly.
Okay. And so I wanted to focus on the paracycling team.
Well, let me just get Nick to introduce himself as well before we do everything else. Yeah.
I was going to chip in, but I thought I'd leave you to it. So my name's Nick Welsh. I am the head of communications at Amos. I've been working with Chris and the rest of the team since 2014. My background is in kind of design and branding and web and digital and photography and writing. So my role is to kind of manage all of that. Anything public facing is what I'm responsible for. But because of my kind of background, I used to have I used to work in the music industry and things. So some of my background is kind of event based and very strong interest in the arts. So things like On Location, which we'll talk about, kind of sit with me and Chris together. Lots of people in the team are very keen cyclists, or have been very keen cyclists. I don't know that we're the only charity in the UK that has its own cycling club. but we might be one of the only charities in the UK that has its own cycling club, which we ride every year to highlight an area of our work and a little bit of fundraising, but mainly just to kind of go cycling. Which is why the Sunbirds is such a great project for us, because it kind of links lots of areas of kind of areas of interest with our work, which is always a bonus. So it's a great project to be involved with if you love cycling. It's a great project to be involved with if you don't like cycling, to be honest. But yeah, cycling is something that's very dear to our hearts. So the Sunbirds is a great project for us.
Yeah, I'm not a cyclist, and this project really was it really stood out to me, hence my read.
How did you hear about the Sunbirds? How did you kind of come to know about them?
Also, my editor sent me, I generally write about, leading Arab figures in the sports industry. And
in what industry?
In the sports industry.
Sports industry, okay, yeah.
Yeah, so I got to, 2 weeks ago, I got to interview the #1 world championship, the first Arab female world championship in squash. And
okay.
I got to meet all these really cool people. And then my editor forwarded me the Gaza Sunbirds team. And I was like, oh, wow, that's like the first time hearing about, a Gaza team going for the Olympics and the Paralympics next year. And then I realized your charity is helping arrange this. And I was like, that's so beautiful and lovely. But there must be so much barriers to actually being able to achieve this. So that's what I wanted to explore.
You wouldn't believe.
Yeah.
I had hair before we started working with them. I had a full head of hair.
The thing about these projects is, we like the kind of big, slightly crazy projects. It suits it kind of suits our personality. I mean, the personality of the organization and our personalities somehow. I can't quite explain it. There were a lot of organizations that wouldn't touch that project they just wouldn't go anywhere near it. But for us, it's kind of a no-brainer and not just because we love cycling. I mean, that is a bonus, really. But it's just so creative and so out there that's exactly the kind of thing that we're kind of drawn to, because it is so unusual and hard. We kind of quite like the hard stuff. It's such a challenge that we're very drawn to that kind of project, I think.
I mean, because anything that has politics attached to it as well is a whole set of walls to get over. I mean, there's politics, and then there's Palestinian politics. I always say that there's politics, and then there's Palestinian.
Yeah. You're not wrong. Yeah.
And then there's Gaza politics within Palestinian politics as well. And then, I mean, I think for us, the reason it resonates so deeply is because I think if you promote hope, people talk about hope and they talk about sort of pie in the sky type stuff, which is just a load of nonsense. I mean, we've got no interest in that. We're talking about that really gritty hope, which sustains us through the day and keeps us going when the situations seem hopeless, as they do in Palestine today. I mean, I think anybody who says doesn't seem hopeless is that. And when the situations seem hopeless, it's really important that we sustain hope, because without that, people literally die. I mean, you just get so much mental health issues around Palestine today. I mean, Gaza, just the levels of post-traumatic stress and ongoing traumatic stress and everything else are just off the charts. So when you're in that situation, we have to believe and do everything we can do to instill hope. And not only that, but also as activists, we kind of need to do that. Otherwise, we just get really bitter and angry and resentful and kind of everything else. Whereas actually, I think we got involved. There was a great quote I just read from Massive Attack today about Sinead O'Connor saying she had, I'll just find it because I'm going to misquote otherwise, because I'm not very good at doing quotes normally. And it said, the fire in her eyes made you understand that her activism was a soulful reflex and not a political gesture. And I kind of hope our activism is a soulful reflex. And I think that's why we get involved with this. It's that kind of, and I think everybody I know in the Palestine campaign, none of them said, well, I can do the campaign because it's a sensible political campaign. You could join a political party, you want to do that. No, for us, it was this kind of, It's that soulful reflex. And I think that's why the sunbirds really resonates with people. But I will very happily talk you through all of the multiple barriers which we are facing with it and just how hard it is, because it is ridiculously difficult. Yeah.
Well, you can start, I guess.
Okay. So basically what happened is we met Allah, who's the person who is built around. So Allah's got an absolutely remarkable story. Basically, he was hoping to be at the Olympics, and he was hoping to compete for Palestine in the Olympics as a cyclist from Gaza, with all the difficulties that brings to it. He's very much a kind of sprinter, so shorter distances. He's not a long stamina one, which obviously if you come from Gaza, you're not going to be a long distance cyclist. And then he went to the Great March of Return. He was standing at the back watching it with his bike in full cycling gear, and he was shot in the leg by an Israeli sniper. I think there was some like 150, you may have to check this number, I think it's like 157 or 163 people were shot in the limbs by Israeli snipers during the Great March of Return. And deliberately targeting particularly lower limbs so people would be crippled from it. And the high velocity bullets just shattered the whole everything. They did surgery, they tried to keep the leg. Eventually they said to him, you're going to have to lose the leg. And with everybody in that situation, it's led to multiple operations because there's infections, prosthetics don't fit very well, all those things. So that whole backdrop to it. And that's an ongoing experience for the team, because a number of people in the team have had to stop training because they've had to have further surgery on the amputated leg, or one person had to stop because in his good leg he got a stress fracture because it was carrying all the weight and everything with it. So that's just the kind of medical challenges which are vast. But Allah, we met him on a webinar, we were talking about cycling, and he said about his desire to set up the Sunbirds, a team. And we, as Nick said, it immediately resonated with us. We were just like, yeah, that's something which is absolutely ludicrous, but we'd love to support. And then we met a few people in the UK, particularly in the kind of filmmaker from Italy, who were also involved, and they'd called themselves Sunbird International. And we looked at this and thought, well, actually, what we'd like to do is to kind of help these young people to develop a charity of their own over the next 2-3 years, so they can be an independent group supporting this project, because it needs that really targeted resource. And we've kind of got just about the capacity to help these people to set that up in the UK and elsewhere, and to develop that. And as they're doing it, help the team in Gaza set up and start running, working with them to do that. And so that's been what we've been working on with these people for the last kind of year, 18 months, really, and particularly the last year especially, has been to get a team running, training regularly in Gaza, which in so many respects sounds really easy. I mean, because if you're in the UK, you want to get a cycling team together, you just kind of phone a few people, say, should we meet on Sunday morning? You head out for a couple of hours, 2-3 hours. I joined them for a cycle ride about a year ago when I was in Gaza last, and everybody faffs about when they start cycling. You know, you're finding your water bottle, you're finding this, you're finding that, and it always takes longer. For there, it was kind of trying to get a prosthetic limb to clip into a pedal which didn't quite work, a shoe falling to pieces, and one person not being able to pedal at all. And just so many different things about it, which meant that kind of without faffing about, I just felt permanently guilty about how I faff about before I get on the bike ride. And so there's all that complication just in one microcosm. So there's a difficulty getting equipment because of a real shortage of bikes. There's more coming in there now, of money for those bikes as well. Massive medical difficulties about getting athletes. Then there's issues about training and the mental health things. Nick and I were speaking to someone a year ago who just said to us, look, if you're going to do anything in Gaza, you've got to recognize that everybody is traumatized. Every single person is traumatized. And the issues in their life every single day means that even doing something like training is incredibly difficult, because there is so much stuff going on. And there's so much stuff internally going on as well, that actually, unless you kind of have some space to address some of those things or to be working on those things, then actually it's never going to work. So there's that aspect as well. And so there's equipment issues, there's those things. Then there's nutrition, because None of these athletes are going to be, they're going to be on food aid, they're going to be on all those things in Gaza because 78% of the population are. That doesn't give you enough energy to go training and to do the sorts of workouts which you need for this sort of thing. So you have that. Then you've got transport to sessions, you've got coaches, you've got all that stuff just about trying to get some cyclists together. Then when something happens in Gaza, like earlier this year, obviously there were attacks on Gaza, you can't go riding then you can't go riding afterwards because cycling is seen as a hobby, which is disrespectful to people who mourn. So then you can't go riding for a few more weeks after that because it's disrespectful for people who are mourning. So there's all those just kind of, that's just the stuff on the sort of everyday, very small bits and pieces in there. And then you've got equipment breaking down, trying to remend that, trying to get in the tubes, trying to get everything when you've got a place which is locked down. So it's just like so many barriers to the just going cycling bit of it. Plus the fact you've got so limited place to go cycling. So you're not going to get lots of new places or anything like that at all. And I get bored going cycling in the same place. You ain't got that choice in Gaza, that's for sure. So there's just that cycling. Then you get to the next level of it, which is about all of the politics and the just myriad politics. Following the demarcation of Hamas by the UK government and all aspects of that as a political organization, as a terrorist organization, that's meant that for any organization working in Gaza, it's who's UK based, it's so much harder. Because it's really important that we are not funding terrorism. If we are funding terrorism in any form, that's a criminal offence, and our trustees and us as staff are liable. And so it's making sure you can clearly evidence that you're not doing that. So that's part of it. It also means you've got to have structures in place in Gaza who can adhere to that, who can show due diligence, who can do everything else like that. So the kind of just complexities of working in Gaza are vast for any project. So even if you're doing a major project, which is kind of a 100,000 town project, you've got some massive complexities. When you're doing a kind of little cycling thing, you've got exactly the same complexities, which you've got to make sure you do. Same due diligence, same everything. And same problems of getting money to the team as well. So at the moment, every payment made to the team costs us $30 because it has to go from euros to dollars into Gaza, which is ridiculous amounts of money just for a payment. You know, you may be paying someone $300, 10% of that's going to be on fees. I mean, it's just, so there's all that complexity just of working in Gaza. And then you got the politics. You got the politics of Israel and Gaza, the politics of people not being able to get out. And so we want to invite people to international tournaments. That's a massive, massive difficulty. You got the politics and difficulty of trying to travel through Egypt, which is a massive difficulty and massively expensive. And then you got the internal politics within Palestine, whereby when you've got situations under such lockdown, where you've got kind of international issues and people desperate for space, desperate for roles, desperate for everything, you're going to have so much of that internal Palestinian politics as well. And so you've got all that to navigate as well. So it, as Nick said, yeah, we love the hard thing, but I'm not actually sure we've done this and we realized just how hard it was going to be at the start. And you never would do anything if you knew how hard it was at the start. But it's been one of those. And the team of people, particularly Karim from the Sunbirds and Flavia from the Sunbirds International, have been amazing this year, and how they've really worked with the team and how they've kind of really helped them to get training regularly, to pursue so many different things with them and kind of really get it established, which has been fantastic and absolutely phenomenal. Yeah.
I knew without a given, you know, this will, it will come with a unique set of challenges, but damn, I can I can hear the frustration, but at the same time the will to not give up. So really admire you guys for that. You know, that's really amazing, because especially when you touched on the mental health of the Palestinians in Gaza, obviously it's because it's generational trauma, you know, and you've had the opportunity, you've mentioned, to go to Gaza a couple of times. I did see the Gaza Sunbirds Instagram account, and I did see you there last year, one of the posts. So I was going to ask you, when you had the opportunity to meet Allah and the other cyclists, what kind of stuck to you? I mean, was it as you anticipated? Well, obviously not. You said when you went there, you didn't realize the prosthetics, clipping all that on and everything. But what really stuck to you that you witnessed during all and after meeting them? I'm sure it made you more determined, or not?
Yeah, the things which struck me, and then I'm going to start purely from cycling, that the only bike I could get was absolutely shocking. It was just, we hired a bike so I could go cycling with him, because I was like, well, I'm not going to meet him unless I go cycling. What's the point? What's the point of rocking up to someone who you talk about cycling the whole time if you can't go cycling? So everybody was really nervous about us cycling on the road together. So we had to go cycling around the track together, which was really odd. It's an athletics track. It's not like a cycling track. So it's an athletics track. So we're cycling there. And because they're really scared, that they're thinking, well, you got someone from the you got an international cycling. And I think we can actually move that forward next time and cycle properly. And then I'm on this worst bike ever imaginable, which we've hired for me to do it. And so I'm just dying trying to keep up with Allah on his bike, and he's got one leg. I'm just virtually, yeah, I'm just kind of, and I cycle a lot. So I'm not, I mean, I cycle a lot. And at that stage, I was cycling an awful lot. And I was just dying because this bike was so awful. I'm blaming it on the bike and not just Allah being a really good cyclist.
Yeah, right.
And he's looking at me with a bit of pity. And all the other cyclists are kind of thinking, and so that stuck in my mind, just that they were just good cyclists, you know, they're young athletes, just really good cyclists. So that just stuck in, yeah, so all the cycling stuff stayed in my head as a pure cycling thing. And meeting them, we tried to film it properly, and we couldn't really film it properly because I just don't know. I don't think we knew what to expect from it. And if we'd thought about it, we'd have got some GoPro, a bit, if we'd kind of had the experience, and next time we go, you'd want a GoPro with it. So you kind of actually get that live footage with it a little bit. And you could see them kind of a bit more in that sort of action, doing what they do. There's a new film coming out on Instagram which captures that. And then in the conversations, I think what we'd like to have done would be sit around over a meal and just talk in that sort of context a bit more, as opposed to sitting around talking about that, because I find my experience with so many people in Gaza is that the trauma people have in their lives just comes out because that, but you can't, it just comes out in the conversations. It's not something which you can ask about. The question doesn't work that way. It's just as you talk, and as you're talking about things, it just comes out in everything about it. So you'll talk about the difficulties of surgery on legs, about this or that, about dreams, aspirations, because a number of them had been footballers before who now moved to cycling because of that. Waiting surgeries, difficulties with it, very kind of very personal. Kind of one of the cyclists we met at the time, who's no longer with them, was just waiting for a further major surgery on his leg and was in so much pain on this cycling day, but who wanted to come and meet us. And so there's all those conversations, which is what it's really about. And I don't even know if we could capture that in an interview at the time. We kind of tried to, but actually it's almost like you just need to be with people, and then to kind of, and then to do sort of some follow-up stuff. So I think it was kind of all that stuff which stood out. Nick, I don't know if you want to kind of chip in.
I was just going to say, and also, you know, although we'd been on webinars and things with these people, and it's not the same. You know, you need to go and you need to kind of have lunch, and you need to have dinner, and you need to chat, and you need to relax, you need to drink coffee, you need to kind of get to know these people if we're going to work with them seriously. They don't know who we are. They don't know about Amos Trust. They don't know us, and why would they? You know. So there's a little bit of kind of there's a lot of relationship building. That day when Chris was cycling, I was with Chris on that trip, but we'll come on to talk about some of the other projects with, you know, I had to go off and do something else, so I wasn't able to meet the team. I wasn't on the track, unfortunately, so I've yet to meet them all, hopefully later this year when we're over, hopefully. But I think until you sit and you kind of build those relationships, you know, over lunch and over time, it becomes much easier once you've done that. like any relationship, once you get to know people, it's much easier because there's trust. You know, we tell them what we're doing and how we might be able to help. And you know, I think they've had so many kind of literally false starts with various kind of people coming and doing. You know, we like to kind of do stuff. You know, we don't want to talk about stuff continually. We want to. There's a degree of that, of course, planning and strategy and yada yada yada. But you know, we like doing stuff. We literally like getting our hands dirty, getting on a bike, or whatever it happens to be. And you know, it's our hope that that relationship kind of grows and the trust is there, and that's how we can help. You know, that's where we can add some value. I hope it's not just about the, you know, the money, although that's really important, and also making promises that we can't keep. You know, we don't want to say, you know, we can definitely get you to Paris in 20, you know, who know, you know, that's out of our hands. You know, there are other you know, things at play that could scupper that, you know. So we have to be very careful what we're able to say that we can offer, I think, rather than going in promising the world and the world not being delivered. You know, we're very mindful of that, I think.
Because I had the opportunity to talk to I don't know if you're familiar with the Gaza amputee football team.
Yeah.
And yeah, so when I was talking to them and the organizers, and they were like, it's even hard to just get them out of the territory and play with the West Bank team.
Yeah.
So when I read this and I read the Paralympics in France, I was just like, wow, that's very ambitious. And
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Very ambitious.
Yeah. And let me answer that. So financially, we haven't got a concern about it, to be perfectly honest. I have absolutely no doubt that for our fundraisers, I kind of just want to be let loose on that one, because they kind of got no doubts at all. If we have got permission for them to go to Paris and to represent Gaza as a paracycling team, that individuals and people are going to rally around and say, yeah, I'll put some money towards that, because you kind of, who wouldn't, you know. And we work very closely with the Big Ride for Palestine, and it's one of the things they fundraise for is the Gaza Sunbirds. And so we work very closely with the whole cycling community there and a far wider one. And to be honest, we'd be contacting pretty Bahrain, Victorious, and a couple of those big international teams and asking for bikes and stuff like that if they get the UCI stuff. The
permits, isn't it?
Yeah, permits are not even the biggest problem for it. Again, the biggest problem, unfortunately, because for something like the Olympics, France would almost certainly, it's whether you're going to get a Schengen visa is the first thing. I think for the Olympics, there's a likelihood of being able to get that. So I think the Schengen visas, obviously there's Israeli permits and Israelis letting them out. You go through Egypt, so you don't have to have that 100%, but it's kind of helps. And so they could stop it, but it's almost a little bit unlikely they would have to, because you're going out through Egypt. And you got all the Egypts, and you got all that stuff about getting through Egypt, which is expensive, but yeah, you probably do the VIP lines, which costs $900 each or whatever, just to make sure you can go. So the whole thing is just ridiculously expensive. Then you've got to take people with the athletes, because obviously all that stuff. So the whole thing's disproportionately expensive. The biggest problem actually with something like that is largely at the Palestinian end for the Olympics itself, because the UCI, I don't think there's not a paracycling team yet registered and acknowledged with the UCI, as far as I know. The UCI is the International Cycling Federation. So there's issues with that, and it would rely on a wildcard entry from the UCI. But actually, just the myriad difficulties in politics within that sort of Palestine para world, and just Olympic world as well, means that they've got so many different priorities, they've got so many different things weighing in on them, say the football team, say this, say that, that's really hard. And so in one respect, the Olympics is almost easier than another tournament, because they've been invited to a load of stuff in Switzerland, they're invited to Italy. Getting visas and permission to go to those was really difficult. So Switzerland, it was all moving forward. That was a UCI invitation to Allah to go to a training camp in Switzerland this summer. And that got held up because ultimately Swiss said, I think I'm right in this, the Swiss just said, look, we're not convinced he's going to go back afterwards. Allah's got a young family in Gaza, but that was their kind of concern. And we know if we try to get them into the UK, we get exactly the same response from the UK government. So you've got all those massive difficulties. Getting people to the West Bank and doing those things there relies on a kind of coordination between the different people involved in Palestinian politics, and that is difficult. Yeah, I'm not going to go into that. It's not my place to go into that. I'm not Palestinian, so I'm not going to even dream of talking about any of that stuff. So all that's just difficult. And so, yeah, all those stuff, the international stuff's a massive challenge. I think for us, we had a meeting with Corinne, as said, who's heading up Sunbirds International yesterday. And for us, our dream as they come into the Olympics, that's what we're really kind of going for. But we recognize the difficulties of that. If that proves impossible, the next dream is a UCI international events. It's in Glasgow this year in August. So looking at next year. They also have meetings 3 times a year for cyclists of a whole lot of different ranges in different countries. So it would be combining that with some training camps in the country as something. But basically, we're kind of putting in the budget for an international trip each year for the Sunbirds team, which is disproportionately expensive. But we're saying, okay, right, if we can't get the Olympics, we can't get that, let's go for this, because the experience alone will be transformative for people. And transformative in terms of understanding in the place they're training in. So we're really kind of going for that. But our absolute dream is the Olympics. And in so many ways, it's actually a lot more pragmatic than some of the other bits, which sounds ludicrous, but it actually is, which is a madness. And we, yeah, as I say, I have absolutely no doubts that you hear some people from Gaza is coming, and who's not going to support it, you know? Yeah,
I actually wanted to ask that when you know, whenever the word Palestine, Gaza, Israel is mentioned, get an instant reaction. You know, people get skeptical, people don't want to say much, people don't want to comment, or people are very opinionated. When you talk about this project and when it was first brought up, what was the initial reaction from the public or from anyone you tried to have spoken to?
Well, I mean, and Nick can talk about the on location stuff particularly. For our trust, because one of our major campaigns is Gaza, and it has been for the last 4 years, 3-4 years, 4 or 5 years, because what we were so aware visiting is that people's, the UN declared that by 2019 Gaza was going to be uninhabitable. That was in 2009. They said in 10 years' time it's going to be uninhabitable. Our experience of visiting Gaza on numerous occasions, it's kind of just like the West Bank, if you like. It's Palestine, but a bit more on steroids, and it's got the sea. And I think without the sea, the mental health things would just be so vast, and so it would be unlivable. But the sea kind of enables people to kind of process stuff and to live. So for us, we were determined that people saw the other side of Gaza, saw the sort of side of Gaza, which we see like the on-location artwork, and saw and had that experience of Gaza, and that we didn't just kind of portray this thing as a victim, a place of victims. Yeah, people are victims, there's no question. But also we try to capture some of the incredible hospitality we receive there, the people we meet who are so inspirational, the people we know. And so our Gaza campaign has really been, it was called Alan Gaza, which is hello from Gaza, or hello Gaza. That was the aim of it. Or kind of welcome, it kind of says both. And we've done stuff with We're Not Numbers. We do these virtual tours of Gaza. And the last one was about Samul Hair, which is, I've pronounced that wrongly, which is about a food which you eat the night before a wedding, and as a wedding food. And it's the big dish you eat there. And that's the stuff which we want to talk about, because that's kind of, that gets below the headlines, it gets below this stuff. And so as we talk about all that stuff for our trustees and people, they just started laughing, because they're just like, they loved it. but they were just thinking, oh, here's another really stupid idea which they've come up with, which is great. And so they just kind of enjoyed it because they're like, well, they kind of, yeah, they're just like, this is fantastic. And yet they're kind of aware that it's difficult, and they're not going to put a load of criteria on us because they kind of know it's really difficult. But there's that bit, if you're working and you're desperate to tell these voices, that you want to tell the voices. And Nick, I'm sure you can add to that.
Yeah, well, I'm just, that's exactly it. It's about telling those other stories, all the stories that if you say Gaza, even if you're talking about Gaza to people who know a little bit about the situation in Palestine, as soon as you in the West Bank, as soon as you mention Gaza, it's rockets and Hamas and destruction and bombing and whatnot, and that's obviously wholly accurate. But when you start meeting people, they're just people like you and I, as you know, and they're cyclists and they're chefs and they want to open restaurants and they're artists and they want to paint and they want to have exhibitions and they're footballers and they're blah 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 blah. So when we met We Are Not Numbers, who initially we met through their Instagram, I think, account, and they obviously the names in the clues in the title, sharing stories outside of the numbers of people that have been killed or people that have had amputations or people that have been shot or whatever, and telling those everyday stories. And we were very attracted to that, not only because of the fact that it was everyday stories, but they just did it so well. The photography was incredible, the films were really good, the way they wrote was exceptional, and that's very appealing to us. It's if we're going to do it, we want to do it as well as we can do it, to honor the work, almost. So when we met with the artists for our on location is, we initially started working with 8 visual artists in Gaza, and it's now we've added another 8 this year. So we have a kind of group of 16 artists, 8 men and 8 women. And for now, it's an online exhibition on our website, which is not ideal, but that's all we could do. We were just coming out of the pandemic, and when we decided to start the project. We have plans next year, hopefully next year, to bring the exhibition into life and to have it in a room with people, and hopefully in London and maybe some other places in the UK. So we're working on that at the moment. But when we started that project, that was another one where everyone forgets about Gaza, and so there was a discussion about whether we should open that project up across for visual artists across the West Bank, of which there are many, and Banksy's Waldorf Hotel in Bethlehem has shown us that there is an appetite for that kind of work. But we wanted to keep it just within in Gaza, because there were other projects for West Bank artists, although that's not to say that that's not hard as well, but we wanted to really stick with Gaza. It really has a place. I mean, Palestine as a whole has a very special place in our hearts. Gaza, even probably, I can't speak for Chris, but for me certainly even more so. When you go, and I've been lucky enough to go I think 2 or 3 times, it's always such a privilege to go there and to meet those people and to hear those stories, beyond the numbers, and to work with those people and to build those relationships. It's to meet the artists and drink coffee with them and talk about their aspirations and what they would, what they need help with and things. It's an amazing privilege and an honor to kind of be able to go and work there and to meet with those people, I think.
Yeah, just to kind of say a little bit more, I mean, some of the stories from the artists we've heard, and I've been working on this for years, area of work I've worked in for years, I've worked on Gaza for years, but even my expectation has been absolutely ripped to shreds by the art some of these one young woman particularly is doing, which I was just like, it's some of the bravest art you could imagine. And you're thinking, how are you able to do that in Gaza? And yet there are. And we did an exhibition, as Nick mentioned, we worked with the Waldorf. We had 50 Gazan artists showing in the Waldorf in Bethlehem. And we had West Bank Palestinians come to the exhibition, friends of ours, and they were just saying they couldn't believe there was so much color in Gaza. they're going, what, all this artists from Gaza, 50 different artists here from Gaza, because they only ever see it being blown up. That's in the West Bank. I mean, and they were just like, what, there's all this art, there's all this color in Gaza, because they can't go, they haven't been able to go for 20 odd years, 25 years. And so there's that whole thing of just this kind of reframing. And the other thing with We're Not Numbers, which we love, is a women run project as well. And if you were kind of following all the stuff which you expect from the Hamas Authority, you'd think, well, how can you have a women-run project in Gaza? And yet we see more women-run projects in Gaza than we do on the West Bank. So go figure. Yeah.
It's incredible working with them. They're in some ways, many ways, they're a perfect partnership for us. Not only, you know, they're just so young, very young women, so creative and funny as hell, and you know, they just kind of love life, you know, and it's such an inspiring organization, and it's a partnership that really does work both ways. You know, a lot of our partners we do work with, and we send them money for this, we send them money for that, and that's great. With We're Not Numbers, we do that, but also they give us so much in return. You know, if back in before we met them, if we needed a film from Gaza, I would go over and I'd make a film, and that was great. But they're such great filmmakers and storytellers. I can just phone them. You know, we have a little WhatsApp chat. I just say, oh look, we need a film about this. We need a film about that. They're making a film at the moment about one of the on location artists for this second round of artists. They're literally doing that at the moment. So it gives them work. It gives there's money coming in for that. Obviously we pay them, you know, for their time, of course. So it kind of works both ways, you know, that they're getting some you know, they're training all their young people to write and to make films and getting paid, and it's a very unique relationship, and yeah, we kind of just want to build on that, really. So every time we go, you know, we love spending time with those guys, and building on that friendship that we've got with them. They made a great film for us for Christmas. Our Christmas appeal last year was for Al Ali Hospital for the breast cancer screening, and we obviously introduced them to the hospital, and they found a lady who had gone through breast cancer treatment at the hospital, and they followed her around, and they made this really great, beautifully shot film of this lady. And we've said to them that when we go, if Chris and I are able to go in September, we want to go and meet her, and we want to thank her in person, face to face, for telling that story, because that's not an easy thing to do, and she did it with such grace and such beauty. You know, we want to kind of take her for a nice meal and say thank you to her family, and they won't let us take them for a nice meal. They'll insist that we go to their house and that they cook for us, which is great too. Just to kind of sit with them and, you know, break down those language barriers and just laugh and eat and spend time with them. So it's always such a privilege to go there.
Mm-hmm. So it's so great to hear how you guys focus on their creativity and you know, bring out the human in them that the media robs them of, you know.
But, you know, we often talk, you know, there are other organizations, great organizations, that, you know, spend their time writing to their MPs and going on demonstrations and doing all that, and that's brilliant, and it's really important. We're not very good at that somehow. We do it a bit, but, you know, we're much more suited to working on these kind of projects. It's much more what we're interested in, and what I think we're better at than some of the other stuff. That's not to, you know, say that other stuff obviously is of course it's important. It's just not that we particularly that's not where we get our kicks, really. You know, we want to get our hands dirty. We want to get on the bike. We want to go and cook the meal, and we want to go for the, you know, do the runs, and, you know, do the art and make those films, really. Those are the stories that and the kind of advocacy that we're more interested in, I think.
Yeah, and I guess you're helping them build on their already amazing resilience. Like you said, like they're like a bubbling life of art within it, despite being under siege and, you know, being limited in inhumane ways. whenever I happen to speak to them, oh, well, I spoke to this poet, because the bars is filled with amazing poets and poets as well. And they say that despite not being able to travel and not having the opportunity to see the world and stuff, they still have their imagination to build on. And like you said, it's a coastal enclave, so they just need to go to the sea, and then that's where the imagination starts, and it just doesn't stop, and it's endless as the sea. And oh God, I can speak about them for days as well. It's just amazing.
Have you been?
No, I haven't. I have not had the opportunity to go for many reasons, but I'm hoping to go next year. Really,
To Gaza specifically.
I would really love to go to Gaza, as well as the West Bank. It's just the best way.
Not easy. It's not easy for journalists to get permission to go.
I know,
It's really difficult. Yeah.
So many barriers, unfortunately. I'm really hoping to get there next year.
Yeah.
Inshallah.
So you know what? I think you guys touched on a lot. You guys addressed every question I had without me having to ask. So straight in. Oh yeah, so you guys will be I saw on the website that you guys will be documenting Allah's journey to Paris, if hopefully it happens, fingers crossed. And even when you guys were talking about the different stuff like the movies, the clips, the videoing, so you guys are a platform that tries to I guess just put it out there, the different creatives that you do and the projects that you do.
We try and our job partly is to kind of amplify what other people are doing. We're a very small organization. We can't be everywhere, but through all the socials and everything.
So much so for a small organization.
Well, yeah, there is that, I guess, but we've got a very hands-off. We're very relaxed about stuff that we do, giving it away, giving it to other. There's a load of work, load of filming that we've done in another part of the world that we've just given to another, a kind of sister organization. We're very relaxed about that. We don't have a tight grip on things, on the visuals. We're very relaxed about all of that. It's really helpful to have that frame of mind when you're working in these places. I think we don't hold it so tightly. So our job really is to amplify, and it works both ways. Amplifying what other people are doing, not talking about us all the time. We're not into that particularly, I don't think.
Yeah, I think for us, it's very rare for us to do an interview like this because and I'm very keen for you to speak to Allah directly, and we'll get Karim to sort that out with you very happily, purely because we don't want to be an advocate for Palestine. We want to be somewhere which amplifies Palestinian voices far more than that. Of course, we're an advocate for Palestine, but we don't want. It's not about us in that. It's about actually creating platforms. It's about enabling people to encounter. So we take loads of trips to Palestine so people meet people, and they have that experience of meeting people face to face and coming back and building relationships. And what we hope comes from that, and this is one of the joys of being a small organization, is we hope people come back and they come up with stupid ideas and they come up with their own ideas. And so I'm just working with someone the last trip I did who's trying to invite some people over to the UK and is now experiencing all the multiple barriers which is involved in that. And he gave me a call this week and I was just like, well, okay, let me give you a few pointers here. And it's great. And we're saying, we love the fact you're doing it. It's wonderful. And we'll help in any way we can do. But it's just, this is the reality and his kind of lived experience in that. We will go along with him, we'll journey with him in it, and the disappointments they'll face and everything else in that, because that's kind of what it's about. So for us, we want to be that way around really about it. And as Nick says, and we take it, we have to take it very seriously, you couldn't dream it. But basically, we trust people. And this is why I think that it's harder if you're working as a UK charity working in, say, Gaza, because the basic premise is that trust doesn't really mean anything, because you've got to have all the numbers, you've got to have due diligence, you've got to have this, and this. And because it's a terrorist organization, that premise of saying, actually, we trust people, and I hope we carry on trusting people always. And if someone lets us down, they let us down. So what? That's far better than not trusting. We want to live in a world where people trust one each other and have relationships with people. And that's the relationships we're going with our partners, because I said at the start, we make mistakes, they make mistakes. And if they trust one another, then you don't think particularly badly about it. You may curse at the time when it happens, but you just go, oh, it's just a mistake, it happens. And so that's the stuff which really, really matters for us. Because, and it's just kind of all the values and everything which we're about, I think.
Thank you for joining us today. And if you have missed any previous episodes of our podcast, you can find it on our site. Thank you.